Welcome, everyone, to today's podcast of Personal Growth Recipes with your host, Ron Denner. Now, today's topic is titled Personal Financial Fitness, and I want to share some good information from one of the best-known authors on personal finance by the name of Dave Ramsey. Now, Dave Ramsey wrote a book called The Total Money Makeover, and I'm going to be talking about some of the highlights of this book with the hope that it can improve your financial life. I'm going to separate this podcast into two different podcasts because of the amount of material that we're going to go through here. And if you can follow the guidelines of this proven system of sacrifice and discipline, you will be debt-free. You're going to begin to save. You'll give like you've never been able to give before. You will literally begin to build wealth. And I promise you that this is totally up to you. And this system will not work for you unless you do. And some of these thoughts and plans may not apply to you, but I want you to learn them so you can pass them along to maybe your kids, your grandkids, and maybe a friend or two, just to teach them to other people, basically. So let's begin with what I call the myth of debt. Debt is a myth, okay? And debt is so ingrained in our culture that most Americans, we cannot envision a car that maybe doesn't have a payment, a house without a mortgage, a student without a loan, or credit without a card. And most people simply cannot comprehend what it would be like to live without payments. Americans currently have about $900 billion in credit card debt, so we can't do without debt, right? Or can we? Now, a myth is that debt is a tool and that it should be used to create prosperity. But the truth is that debt adds considerable risk. And most often it does not bring prosperity, and it's really not used by wealthy people nearly as much as we think. If you look into the lives of people that you want to be like, you're going to find some common themes here. If you want to be skinny, study skinny people. If you want to be rich, do what rich people do. Makes sense, right? When surveyed, 75% of the Forbes 400 companies said the best way to build wealth is to become debt-free and stay debt-free. For instance, Walgreens, Costco, Harley-Davidson are all run debt-free. I never met anybody who said they made it pretty much with all those Discover points on their card. I've never met one yet. They all lived on less than what they made and spent only when they had cash. Matter of fact, Sears now makes more money on credit than on the sale of merchandise. They're not a store. They're really a lender with just some stuff out front. Now, Henry Ford thought that a lazy man's method to purchase items was debt. He thought that was crazy. So Ford initially did not offer any kind of financing on vehicles until 10 years after General Motors did. And now today, Ford Motor Credit is what it's called, is one of the most profitable of Ford's operations. Another myth is that 90 days, same as cash, equals using people's money for free. Sounds like it should, right? But the truth is that 90 days is not the same as cash. Now, this is for two basic reasons. Let me tell you, if you can flash a $100 bill in front of a sales manager who's got a sales quota to meet, what you're going to find is you're probably going to get a discount for doing that. And you don't get the discount when you sign up for a finance plan. They just don't offer it. The second reason is that most people do not pay off the debt in those 90 days. Nationally, about 88% of those contracts convert to a debt if it's not paid within those 90 days, it converts to a debt. And the interest rates are anywhere from 24 to 38%, which is crazy. Now, another myth is that car payments are a way of life and you're going to always have one. But the truth is that staying away from car payments, by driving a reliable used car is really what the millionaires actually do. The car payment, that's most people's largest payment next to the rent or mortgage payment. The average car payment, take a guess, it's $495 per month, spread out on average over about 64 months. So what most people end up doing, they get a car payment and they keep it really throughout most of their lives. So let's do an example here. If you keep a $495 car payment, monthly car payment throughout your life, you're really going to miss the opportunity to invest that money. Now, this next part is going to probably make you a little sick. If you invest at $495 per month from age 25 to age 65 in the average mutual fund growth fund at 12%, at age 65, you would have $5,881,000. If you took that $495 a month just for 10 months and put it in a cookie jar, you'd have nearly $5,000 to buy a cash car, pay cash. After 20 months, you would have nearly $10,000 just to buy a car. So most people hesitate to do this because they're concerned of what their family or friends are going to think. If you're driving an older car, you may not, the status thing, right? A car has become a financial status symbol in our society. It's really one of the biggest financial mistakes that people continue to make. Now, so are you starting to realize that this has really got to be in your heart? Reaching the goal is the motivator. And I believe that the introduction of rideshare services like Uber and Lyft, they're really going to be a forerunner of really the next big change that's coming in the auto market. If you think about it, think about this for a second. Our vehicles sit around 80 to 90% of the time not being used. They're in our driveway or garage. I can picture an innovative company coming along and offering what I call something similar to a subscription service for mileage. What I mean by that, you would be able to sign up for, say, X amount of miles and be able to interchange those vehicles on maybe a daily or even weekly or monthly basis. Now, you'd literally be renting miles instead of owning or leasing a car. Now, this is not the same as leasing a vehicle, It's different. Do you realize that when you include maintenance and just the cost of running a vehicle, the car payment, it costs over $600 a month to maintain a vehicle and have a vehicle. And I always think about this. If a mileage subscription service could come out and cut that considerably down, I think it would go over pretty well. So stay tuned on that one, right? Another common myth is that leasing a car is better than buying a car. We hear that a lot. In my opinion, now the only time to consider leasing a vehicle is if you can deduct the lease payments as a business expense. Now, obviously it would have to be used for business purposes, But in reality, let's do the math, because the math really doesn't work out when you actually do the math. So let's talk about it. A typical lease payment is about $5,000 per year, The average tax savings, because you can deduct the lease payments, that's about $1,500 per year. See, the problem is that it's costing you $5,000 to save $1,500. So that really doesn't make sense when you do the math. So an argument could also be made, though, that you're getting to drive a new vehicle, right? That's on the plus side. But that to me that's a pretty heavy price to pay for the privilege of leasing a vehicle that, when you walk away at the end of it, you really have nothing to show for it. You have no equity or anything. So now I've spent a fair amount of time talking about really the second biggest expense that we're going to have in our budget. That's vehicles. So But a vehicle is it's really a necessity in today's society. So we just need to put logic ahead of emotion if we can when we select a vehicle and what kind of payment option we get ourselves into. Let's move on to the subject of credit cards. Now, the explosion in credit card debt, it really has caused more damage to individuals' personal finances than any other item, in my opinion. It puts a lot of stress on marriages, and it just gives people a feeling of hopelessness sometimes because they don't have a way out of it or see a way out of it. Now, I've heard different amounts, but the one I've heard the most often is that the average household in America has about $12,000 in credit card debt, and it's continuing to go up, not down. And what we're doing is we're using credit cards now to catch some of life's emergencies and for what I call keeping up with the Joneses. And we're really buying things that we want instead of what we need. I believe that one of the biggest changes over the last 5 to 6 years is that we don't have to leave our house to shop, right? We can go online and just think no further than Amazon. We can buy anything with a few clicks. And we're always getting those credit cards in the mail, right? I throw mine away, but enough people bite on them, they still send them out. The credit card companies are so profitable that they can write off, they factor in what they cannot collect. They know a certain percent they're never going to be able to collect, but they're still so profitable that they'll send credit cards to anybody. If you have a pulse, you're going to get a credit card offer. So be careful on those. Now, another myth that you hear is that I'll just pay off the credit card every month, and I'll get the free use of someone else's money. Now, that's true. That's true if you follow that every month and stick with it. But the truth is, here's the actual truth. About 60% of people don't pay off their credit cards every month. Another method you hear about is to just sign up for a credit card and to take advantage of airline miles. Okay? They've done studies. About 90% of airline miles are never redeemed. 90%. So be careful on that one. Another one, this has happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to you. You go to a store, you buy something, and they'll mention, well, if you sign up for our store credit card, we'll give you 10% off. Well, what ends up happening, now you've got another credit card that you can go grab down the line. So be careful. That's a hook. Be careful on that one. Don't fall into it, okay? A lot of people, I was in McDonald's a couple months ago. I noticed they have credit card machines now. And I found out McDonald's had done a study. What they found out is that people that use credit cards when they purchase at McDonald's spend 47% more than if they use cash. So that's why they're there, okay? When you use cash, you just usually don't spend as much. And another myth is that some parents want to get a credit card for their teenager to get them established, right? That can be a terrible trap for that teenager to start getting into building a pile of debt. Really, it's not a good idea, okay? Another myth you hear about is debt consolidation. You see it on TV. You just have one smaller payment. Well, the truth is, debt consolidation is really, really dangerous. Here's why. Because what you're really doing is you're treating the symptom and not the problem. The spending is still there. You haven't fixed the real problem here. And, you can't borrow your way out of debt, basically. And about 78% of the time after somebody consolidates their debt, what actually happens is the debt actually ends up getting bigger from where it started, okay? So don't try not to fall into that trap too. It's an easy one. On the surface, it sounds like it makes sense, but be careful, okay? So are you beginning to understand that debt is not a tool? It's not a tool. It's simply a method to make banks and credit card companies richer, period, at your expense. The borrower really is a slave to the lender. You don't want to be a slave to the lender. Your biggest wealth building asset is your income. It's your income. So when you tie up your income, you lose. I lose, okay? And when you invest your income, you become wealthy and you can do anything that you want. So the total money makeover is really a process that begins with what I call baby steps. We can do anything financially if we do it one step at a time. Find something to do and do it with vigor until it's complete. Then we go on to the next step. If you try to do everything at once, you're going to fail, okay? The power of focus is really what these baby steps, what makes them work. And when you put 3% in your 401k, an extra $50 on the house payment, an extra $5 on a credit card, what you're really doing is you're watering down your efforts, you're diluting your efforts. And because you end up attacking several areas at one time, you really don't finish anything that you start. So we want to avoid that. And that makes you feel like you're really not accomplishing what you set out to do, which is very dangerous. So the power of the priorities also causes the baby steps to work. They really literally build on one another. They stack on one another. And if they're done out of order, they won't work. There's a specific order. So to start the baby steps, we're going to work on one important step to the exclusion of all the others, one at a time. Patience. We'll climb the whole mountain, but not until we have a strong base camp. Now, you're going to be tempted to short-circuit this process, but you're going to be more concerned about one area of your money, but don't do it. You want to stick to the step-by-step process here. We'll walk you through it. So these steps are a proven plan to financial fitness, and they're really in the right order for everyone. Now, there's 7 baby steps that we're going to cover in the next Wednesday's podcast. We're going to go through the 7 steps. And it's very important, like I said, to follow these steps in the proper order. So be sure to tune in to next Wednesday's podcast. Like I said, we're going to split it up and go into those 7 next. Okay, so I really encourage you to tune in. And that's it. Well, I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. And I invite you to tune in to my upcoming podcast, as I mentioned, next Wednesday. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like, share, and leave a comment. And follow me at Twitter at Ron Denner. Follow me at Instagram at Denner Ron. YouTube, my YouTube channel, Ron Denner. And please subscribe to Personal Growth Recipes on Apple Podcasts. And if you enjoyed it, please consider giving us a 5-star rating. And also please like and share our Facebook page, Personal Growth Recipes. And this is Ron Denner, your host for Personal Growth Recipes, serving up and signing off.